The course of a person's life is an unpredictable thing, its path impossible to foresee. Deep within the labyrinthine corridors of a Shinjuku dungeon, a party of 4 adventurers stands ready amidst the rubble of a vast, pillared chamber. One of them, a young woman in a school uniform armed with a bow, calls out to a man named Hirushige, confiding that until today, she felt trapped in a dead-end job with no idea what the future held. Beside her, a swordswoman with a high ponytail grips her katana and echoes his name with urgency. He turns his attention to another companion, stating that his words should now carry more weight. After all, he reflects, just 1 month ago, he was nothing more than an ordinary office worker. The scene shifts, rewinding to 1 month prior. In a sterile office, Hirushige Yamamoto bows before his manager, who coldly informs him there will be no bonuses, raises, or promotions. The weight of his corporate life is palpable, endless, uncompensated overtime for only a basic salary. He lets out a long, defeated sigh. The truth is laid bare. Hirushige Yamamoto, after 16 years of leveraging his strengths for the company, has been fired at the age of 38. Now unemployed, he sits on a park bench, his gaze fixed on a massive, twisted tree that has enveloped a skyscraper, a dungeon. A thought forms in his mind. Perhaps he should try being an explorer. The thought is immediately followed by a question to himself. What on earth is an explorer? He walks through the city, reading a pamphlet that provides the answer. About 20 years ago, buildings began to transform into monster nests through a process called dungeonification. Those who dare to challenge these labyrinths are known as explorers. If they defeat the boss deep inside, the facility returns to its original state. Some seek to reclaim their daily lives, others hunt for treasure, and some simply wish to test their own strength. The path one chooses is entirely up to them. He sits through a promotional video where an energetic young woman with star-adorned pigtails and goggles encourages new recruits, telling them they too can become an explorer and make their dreams come true. As the video concludes, the instructor, Konomi Sakuragi, asks if there are any questions. He wonders to himself about some ominous fine print he thought he saw. Before he can ask, Sakuragi announces that registration will take place in a separate room, startling him with the sudden transition. He follows her into a grand hall, where they stand before a massive, black monument covered in glowing runes. Sakuragi instructs him to place his hand on it and state his name and age. He complies, his voice echoing slightly as he declares, "I'm Hirushige Yamamoto, 38 years old." With his hand still on the stone, he turns to Sakuragi with a look of uncertainty, asking if this is really all that's required. He remains silent, his brow furrowed with doubt. Her expression softens as she confirms that this monument is what designates all explorers. She admits that sometimes the process feels so simple, it's as if they're being given special treatment. Snapping back to her professional role, she apologizes for the tangent and gives him the next instruction. Say the word status. He obeys, speaking the command aloud. In an instant, a translucent rectangular screen materializes directly in front of him, catching him by surprise. As he stares at the screen, Sakuragi explains that its contents are visible only to him. It displays his basic information. Hirushige Yamamoto, human, age 38, level 1, with full health and stamina, but no skills listed. She emphasizes that the most important part is that he can become stronger by defeating monsters and leveling up. She elaborates on the importance of skills, explaining that while some are acquired through hard training, everyone receives a few starting skills upon registration. The quality of these initial skills, she stresses, is a direct measure of one's innate talent as an explorer. He begins to understand the gravity of the situation. Sakuragi adds that even an older man like him has a chance if he gets a decent skill. With a focused intensity, she urges him to read aloud the skills listed on his status screen. He braced himself, his thoughts narrowing to a single, critical concept: talent. The results of his registration materialized before him on the status screen. It listed his name, Hirushige Yamamoto, age 38, and 2 starting skills: identification and domination of all things. He glanced over at the receptionist, Konomi Sakuragi, and his heart sank. Her expression was one of undisguised pity, a look that screamed failure. She tried to explain, noting that identification was a reasonably useful skill for checking the status of monsters and other explorers. However, when it came to domination, she trailed off, admitting she didn't know the details. Seeing her hesitation, he concluded it must be no good. Her face contorted with regret as she delivered the bad news. Domination, she clarified, was infamous for being one of the top 3 worst starting skills an explorer could receive. It was, in a word, terrible. The skill functioned by consuming the user's spiritual power, or SP, to control monsters. Its fundamental flaw, however, was its profound weakness. She elaborated further. Only weak monsters could be controlled, and one had to use the identification skill just to confirm their weakness beforehand. Stronger monsters were completely immune to its effects, rendering it useless in any serious confrontation. With the grim explanation complete, she offered a hesitant farewell, wishing him a good life as an explorer. The words fell hollow as he turned to leave the registration area in silence. He stood in the bustling lobby, surrounded by vibrant, well-equipped young explorers. Clutching his newly issued license, a sense of bitter resignation washed over him. He had known it all along. He tried to convince himself that it didn't matter. Becoming an explorer had just been a whim, a spontaneous decision without any real thought behind it. It wasn't as if he was planning to make a career out of it. He stood in the bustling hallway, watching other, more confident explorers pass by, a single thought echoing in his mind. Was he truly without talent? As a particularly vibrant party strode past, he couldn't help but feel the stark contrast. At 38 years old, he felt like an old man in this world of youthful prodigies, a realization that made a bitter sort of sense. Suddenly, a heavy boot stomped onto the floor nearby, drawing his attention. A murmur rippled through the onlookers as they recognized the approaching group, with someone whispering in awe that it was the Absolute Knights. The party moved with an air of undeniable power. A handsome warrior in gleaming plate armor led the way, his expression calm and confident. Beside him walked a woman with a high ponytail, her hand resting near the hilt of the katana on her back, followed by their equally formidable-looking companions. Lost in the crowd, he watched them proceed down the hall. The air buzzed with whispers from the other explorers, who spoke of the party's legendary status as the strongest and their plans to raid the Shinjuku dungeon. The talk of their strength sparked an idea. He recalled one of his own skills, identification, which allowed him to check the status of monsters and other explorers. A surge of curiosity washed over him. He narrowed his eyes, focusing his intent on the departing party, wondering what the status of the so-called strongest truly looked like as he activated the skill. His vision shifted as a translucent screen of information began to form over the figure of the female warrior. As the data compiled, she paused, her head tilting slightly as if sensing an unseen gaze upon her. The information resolved into clarity. Her name was Kokono Sakurako, a 24-year-old human at level 139. Her status was a staggering list of powerful skills: identification, acuity, intuition, multiple high-level resistances, and advanced combat arts. The sheer disparity was overwhelming. He realized that such special skills were the culmination of innate talent, a strong lineage, and relentless training. The fact that someone a full generation younger than him could achieve such heights was incredible, almost laughable. A hollow chuckle escaped his lips. He walks away from the high-level dungeon entrance, leaving the famous explorers behind. As he departs, the party members chat amongst themselves, one suggesting they defeat a single monster as a memento of their visit. As he departs, Kokono Sakurako suddenly halts, her head snapping back with a sharp sound. Her gaze is intense, as if she has just sensed an unseen presence. Her teammate, the young man in plate armor, notices her abrupt stop and asks her what is wrong. She dismisses his concern, claiming it was nothing. Still, she cannot shake the feeling. She glances back in the direction Yamamoto left, wondering to herself if the strange presence she felt was real or just her imagination. Leaving the elite party behind, Hiroshi Yamamoto arrives at his own destination, the Nipperi dungeon. The building is old and overgrown with thick vines. Taking a breath to steady his nerves, he resolves to go inside. His decision is based on the recommendation from the guild receptionist, Konomi Sakuragi. He recalls her cheerful advice, explaining that for a first-time explorer, Nipperi is ideal because its monsters are weak and there are very few casualties. The memory of her voice follows him as he steps into the dark, rocky interior of the dungeon. She had told him that once he finishes exploration, he should contact the guild, and with that, his training as an explorer would be complete. But as he stands alone in the gloom, a bead of sweat traces a path down his temple. A sense of unease begins to creep over him. The long, dark, empty hallway stretches before him, its oppressive atmosphere uncomfortably familiar. The sight triggers an unpleasant memory, reminding him of the company office when he was forced to work overtime all night. The memory becomes vivid. His boss, enraged, slams his hand on a pile of documents, demanding to know why they aren't finished. Yamamoto tries to explain that it was supposed to be the department head's job, but his manager screams at him to get it done by tomorrow. Overwhelmed and defeated, Yamamoto can only apologize, accepting the blame. He remains frozen, trapped not by the dungeon's darkness, but by the piercing memory of his former life. The whispers of his co-workers echo in his mind, branding him a pitiful loser, again and again. Shaking his head violently, he forces the intrusive thoughts away. He tells himself to stop thinking about the company. He is an explorer now. Since he's here, he resolves to have fun and conquer the Nipperi dungeon. With renewed determination, he plants his foot firmly on the cavern floor. He reasons that it doesn't matter if he lacks talent. He still has savings and all the time in the world to make this new life work. His resolve solidified. He ventures deeper into the rocky passage. A faint, high-pitched sound suddenly catches his attention, causing him to halt and look around in surprise. Turning back, he spots the source of the noise. A small, gelatinous creature sits on the ground, emitting a soft glow and another quiet Kion sound. He stares, taken aback. It's a monster, looking exactly as he had imagined one would. The creature gives a slight bounce, seemingly harmless. Deciding to gather more information before acting, he focuses his intent and activates his identification skill. A status window appears in his vision, detailing the creature's nature. It is a level 1 slime in normal condition, with 19 hit points, 2 magic points, and 2 skills, charge and absorb. He watches with a hint of amusement, thinking to himself that this is what monsters are really like. In that instant of lowered guard, the slime launches itself forward, slamming into the air. The creature collides with his stomach with unexpected force. The impact knocks the wind out of him, his eyes widening in shock at the sudden, effective attack from the tiny monster. He reeled from the impact, sprawled on the dungeon floor. The sharp pain registered with a jolt of disbelief. He'd actually been hit. His first instinct was to check his condition, mentally calling up his status. The status screen confirmed the damage, 8 points. With only 54 hit points remaining, he quickly calculated that he could only withstand 6 more such attacks. The grim realization struck him hard. One more hit, and he would be dead. His eyes scanned his own details. Hiroshi Yamamoto, age 38, level 1, with the skills domination of all things and identification. As this dreadful thought took hold, the slime began to rumble and advance once more. Panic surged through him. Could he defeat it? Could he even dodge it? He knew this was a terrible situation. His gaze snapped back to his status screen, his eyes locking onto a single line: domination of all things. A desperate idea formed. He understood the method now. It was an all-or-nothing gamble. As the slime lunged, he resolved that he had to do something, anything with this power. He thrust his hand forward, a surge of energy crackling around it as he roared the skill's name. Domination. Silence fell in the cavern, broken only by the sound of his own ragged breathing. When he looked, the slime was no longer attacking. It sat placidly before his feet, letting out a soft coo. A new status floated above it. Awaiting orders. Yamamoto gasped, stunned by the sudden change. He stared in disbelief, a wave of relief washing over him. It had worked. The domination thing had actually worked. This meant the creature was now under his command. The sudden release of tension, however, left him feeling nauseous. He clutched his chest, feeling the drain on his energy. A quick check of his status confirmed his suspicion. His SP had plummeted from 54 down to 14. The skill had consumed a staggering 40 points. He steadies himself, taking a deep breath. The exhaustion is profound, but he dismisses it with a grimace, reflecting that it's nothing compared to the grueling experience of working his third consecutive day of overtime. He turns his attention to the now docile slime. He recalls hearing that weak monsters don't typically listen to commands, but seeing it waiting patiently for orders gives him an idea. He decides to test its obedience, instructing it to try jumping for him. To his surprise, the creature immediately begins to bounce. It is listening to him. He wonders if his mana was simply too immature before. As if to confirm its eagerness, the slime launches itself high into the air with a final, energetic leap. He tells the slime it can stop, and it immediately settles down. A thoughtful expression crosses his face as he strokes his chin. He realizes that if the creature is this obedient, there might be a chance for him, after all. Putting his newfound advantage to the test, he draws a small knife and roars the command to charge. The tamed slime rockets forward, slamming into an identical, hostile slime with surprising force. The tamed slime's charge stuns the enemy. Seizing the opportunity, Yamamoto lunges forward, bringing his knife down in a decisive slash that obliterates the hostile creature. He stands panting, the fight won. He lets out a triumphant shout. That was the 5th one he had defeated. A surge of accomplishment flows through him. His grip tightens on the knife's handle. A powerful realization dawns on him. If he can keep this up, even he can fight. He can survive. The small slime bounces excitedly, as if celebrating his victory with him. Amused, Yamamoto checks his status and discovers his level has gone up to 2. He confirms to his companion that his level has indeed risen a little. His smile gives way to a hollow laugh. The triumphant moment in the dungeon fades, replaced by the stark, oppressive image of him working late, alone in a vast, dark office. The weight of his reality returns. His mind flashes back to the crushing emptiness of his office, a stark contrast to the rocky dungeon floor where his new companion, Q, waits patiently. Returning to the present, he crouches down and gently pats Q's gelatinous form, letting out a small laugh as it wobbles in response. The slime seems to question its master's sudden shift in mood. He reflects on this new bond, realizing that for the first time in his life, he has a subordinate. Q seems to share the sentiment. With a newfound sense of purpose, he gets to his feet. He decides to try a little harder and turns his attention toward a dark cave entrance nearby. The dungeon itself is housed within a derelict, multi-story building, its concrete facade now overgrown with thick, dark vegetation under a cloudy sky. Emerging from the dungeon's entrance, he wipes sweat from his brow, looking somewhat dazed by the daylight. Just then, a voice calls out his name. He turns to see Kinomi Sakuragi rushing towards him, panting as she comes to a stop. She immediately begins to scold him, reminding him that he was supposed to report to her as soon as he entered the cave. He apologizes, explaining that he was busy hunting monsters and was just about to head over. His excuse catches her off guard. She stammers, asking if he truly spent the entire time hunting monsters. He confirms it, adding that he has just finished his exploration. She then reveals the shocking truth. More than 15 hours have passed since he first entered the dungeon. The revelation leaves him stunned. He looks up at the sky, remarking that he became so used to pulling all-nighters at his previous job that he didn't even realize how much time had passed. She counters that just because he is used to it doesn't mean he can hunt monsters for over 5 hours straight, though he adds that this was more fun than his old work. He explains further. His previous job was just endless, solitary processing with no end in sight. Here, however, his level goes up, and he can see tangible progress. Her attention immediately latches onto his last words, and she asks with surprise if his level really went up. He confirms that it did, though only by a little. To find out by how much, he summons his status screen, which materializes in front of him with a soft whoosh. The screen displays his information. Hiroshi Yamamoto, age 38, now at level 8. He reports this to Sakuragi, adding with a touch of self-deprecation that it's a slow pace for an older man. His casual statement leaves her utterly stunned. She internally processes the shocking fact. He gained 8 levels in a single day. As she tries to comprehend this, she explains that regardless of the level, it normally takes a great deal of time to gain even a single level, even for the fastest explorers. She realizes his abnormal growth speed is a direct result of hunting for over 10 hours without rest. It's an unprecedented rate. Yamamoto, meanwhile, simply looks on with a confused expression. He, still focused on procedure, asks about the report he needs to file. Flustered, Sakuragi quickly tells him she has already confirmed everything and that he is free to go home. She watched him turn to go, his pack already secured for the journey. He offered a simple farewell, stating that he was leaving now. As his figure receded into the distance, she was left with a profound question. She wondered to herself just who Hiroshi Yamamoto truly was. Meanwhile, Yamamoto rode the train, the car rattling around him. He sat clutching a small bundle, his expression distant and weary. His gaze remained unfocused, lost in thought as he stared out the window. A single word echoed in his mind. Tomorrow. The train car filled with other passengers, a sea of tired faces returning from their own daily routines. He stood among them, a weary figure in the crowd. His life was a grueling cycle. After the dungeons, he faced the relentless demands of his office job, surrounded by glowing monitors and endless paperwork. He would return home only to collapse onto his bed, too drained to even change out of his suit, the room around him a testament to his neglect. But now, looking out at the city as a new day dawned, he had a moment of clarity. He realized that lately, he hadn't had a single chance to truly think about his own life. This realization brought a sense of uncertainty. Clutching the bundle in his lap, he wondered what the future now held for him. His grip tightened on the fabric, a surge of determination running through him. A new venture was about to begin. He gazed out at the sprawling cityscape, where a massive, otherworldly tree towered over the buildings and train lines. A sense of resolve settled over him as he considered his next move, thinking to himself that he was looking forward to it. Elsewhere, a confident young adventurer with light hair gave a sly smile to his companion, a small mage in a pointed hat who looked up at him with wide eyes. Well then, he announced coolly, time to join the group. He and the mage stood at a doorway with the rest of their party. A woman with a long braid wished them a safe trip, admitting her envy. From his seat on the floor, an armored warrior impatiently shouted for them to get to it, complaining that they couldn't have For Haruhisa Yamamoto, it was another grueling day at the oppressive company. A female colleague stood over his desk, reminding him that he was not to think about going home until his work was finished. He retorted that he was already doing everything he could, but his words carried little weight. She turned and walked away without another word. He watched her go for a moment, the stress evident on his face, before turning his tired eyes back to the glow of his computer monitor. His focus was shattered moments later when his manager began shouting his name from across the office, demanding to know where a set of papers was. Flustered, Yamamoto could only stammer a response, promising to get them right away. The oppressive memory faded as Yamamoto jolted awake in his bed, a thin sheen of sweat on his brow. He sat up, realizing with a sigh of relief that he was still having nightmares about that awful job. He threw back the covers and moved to the window, pulling the curtains aside with a sharp tug. He reminded himself firmly that he was no longer a corporate drone. It was time to switch gears. Looking out over the city skyline, he stood with his hands on his hips, a new resolve hardening his expression. With a determined breath, he declared it was time to get to work. His new workplace was the Shinjuku dungeon. Deep within its upper floors, a monstrous creature with a gaping maw filled with needle-like teeth let out a piercing shriek. The source of the cry revealed itself as 2 goblin-like monsters, brandishing crude weapons, lunged toward Yamamoto. In response to the ambush, his hand moved with practiced speed, drawing a small, rectangular card from a device on his wrist. The card flared with power, unleashing 2 intersecting slashes of energy that cut down both goblins in a single, fluid motion. Yamamoto stood ready, his expression intense and focused on the path ahead. He whirls around, blade at the ready, just as a goblin leaps from the shadows, its claws aimed for his head. But his attack is faster. The twin blades of light he summoned erupt upwards, skewering the creature through its chest before it can land a blow. With the threat dispatched, his attention turns to the small, gelatinous creatures that have appeared. He seems pleased, giving them names: Surichiro, Surijuro, Surisaburo. One of them, Q, lets out a happy warble. He resolves to push a little further into the dungeon. The very next day, however, his return to the guild hall is met with a piercing scream from Kinomi Sakuraji, who demands to know what he thinks he's doing. Her shock is directed at the large slime monster sitting calmly beside him. She furiously asks if he brought a monster out of the dungeon. He tries to calm her, but she's already in a panic, declaring that first he pulled an all-nighter and now this. It's a walking disaster. She threatens to report the incident immediately, as he protests that he's freaking out too. The commotion at the reception desk draws attention. The central question becomes clear: is it even possible to cancel a tame? He explains frantically that the situation is bad. The slime must have crawled into his bag on his way out of the dungeon the day before. He swears he never noticed it and has no idea how to cancel the bond. She listens, her expression shifting from alarm to contemplation. He admits that while the situation is bad, something about it is weird. Piqued, she asks him what he means. He clarifies that normally, using skills outside of designated dungeon zones triggers instant alerts from a guild. However, despite having a tame monster with him in the middle of the city, he hasn't been flagged at all. His unprecedented progress left Kinomi Sakuraji deep in thought. 8 levels in a single day, coupled with a completely unknown skill, was an anomaly she couldn't easily dismiss. She watched him stand beside his placid slime, a growing certainty solidifying in her mind. There was definitely something strange about this man. She internally debated whether she should report him, but the thought of the extensive paperwork made her hesitate. With a forced, bright smile, she turned to the bewildered Yamamoto and declared that, for now, everything was fine. She explained her reasoning. He hadn't triggered any skill alerts, and it wasn't technically illegal to possess monsters. Then, with a sudden burst of volume, she proclaimed her belief in him, while muttering under her breath that reporting him would be a massive pain. Yamamoto could only stare, utterly confused by her rapid change in demeanor. With a final piece of advice, she admonished him not to parade his slimes around again, reminding him how much he'd scared her. He quickly agreed, still flustered from the encounter. As he turned to leave, she called out to him one last time, suggesting he try the Shinjuku dungeon. The name gave him pause. He took her advice. Sakuraji's voice echoed in his memory, explaining that Shinjuku was a step up, with monsters only slightly stronger than slimes. Inside the dilapidated structure, he found himself facing goblin-like creatures, his knife already at the ready. Moments later, he stood over a mountain of defeated monsters, wiping sweat from his brow. His status confirmed his progress. Level 19, with a host of combat skills now at level 4. He wryly recalled Sakuraji's assessment of the dungeon's difficulty. Slightly, indeed. The bodies of the slain creatures, resembling monstrous boars, began to dissolve into particles of light, leaving behind only their material drops. He picked up one of the items, a large fong, and activated his appraisal skill. The information appeared before him. A goblin fong, with an estimated value between 500 and 800 yen. He let out a weary sigh. He stands amidst the rubble of a dungeon floor, a profound sense of change settling over him. With a determined expression, he acknowledges his new reality. He is no longer the salaryman he used to be. He has finally become an explorer. As he savors the moment, his tamed slime, Q, bounces energetically toward him, announcing its presence with a cheerful cry. However, it is not just one slime, but 3. Yamamoto has summoned a small squad, naming them Surichiro, Surijuro, and Surisaburo. A quick appraisal reveals their individual statistics. Each is a capable combatant with skills in tackling and absorbing. He praises his new team for their excellent coordination, patting their gelatinous forms and instructing them to continue scouting the area. The 3 slimes chirp in unison, eager to obey. He reflects on how helpful it is to have a squad, though he notes the current limitation. He can only keep 3 of his monsters active at once, and he cannot bring them all home or around town. With his slime squad leading the way, he presses on. The constant fighting begins to wear on him, leaving him breathless and sweating, but his companions attack their unseen foes relentlessly. After the battle, he inspects his loot, a decent haul of monster fangs. He observes that they're all cheap, low-value items, which only strengthens his resolve to grind more. His attention is then drawn to a dark, recessed corner of the dungeon. A thought, born from countless hours playing games, surfaces. Treasures are always tucked away in places like this. Acting on the hunch, he turns to his lead slime and gives a command. Surichiro is to go check out the dark passage. As the creature slides forward into the gloom, he manages his expectations. The area has probably been cleaned out already, but he feels it's worth a look, just in case. He called out for his slime, Surichiro, only for it to emerge from the passage, flattened and defeated. His face fell in surprise and concern. The reason for the slime's condition became immediately clear. Just ahead, a group of hostile explorers had cornered a young woman. She was bound and gagged, held captive by a muscular man with a mohawk and his 2 cronies. The leader of the group turned, his expression shifting from amusement to annoyance at the interruption. The captive girl's eyes widened in terror and a silent plea for help as she saw the newcomer. He smirked, correctly deducing from the man's shocked face that he possessed an appraisal skill. The captor confidently stated that his own level must be much higher. A cold realization washed over Yamamoto. The man was strong. His gaze dropped to the defeated slime, squirming on the ground. With contempt, he asked if the pathetic creature belonged to Yamamoto, before bringing his foot down and crushing it completely. He sneered, declaring that anyone who bothered with useless trash like slimes must be trash themselves. The verbal assault continued as he pointed dismissively. He called Yamamoto a pathetic old man, mocking his trash skill, his trash monsters, and his trash level, adding that he almost felt sorry for him. A cruel idea then struck the Mohawk man. With a wicked laugh, he invited Yamamoto to join in their fun, suggesting it would be a once-in-a-lifetime thrill and even offering to let him cop a feel of their terrified captive. Yamamoto's expression hardened into a cold mask. The present cruelty triggered a memory from his past, a quiet and painful recollection. I heard she died. He remembered sitting in the dark office, pondering the circumstances of her death. He wondered if the department head was to blame or if she had taken her own life. A wave of regret washed over him as he thought that if someone had just helped her, but it was too late. Still, the unresolved feeling lingered, fueling his resolve in the present. He remembered the powerlessness of his past life, his hands clenched in quiet frustration at an office desk, unable to act. That feeling was inextricably linked to the memory of a helpless, gagged girl and the lifeless remains of a companion he had failed to protect. But standing now in the dungeon, he resolved that he was no longer the man he used to be. He vowed to live this new life on his own terms and refused to do anything he didn't want to. His purpose became singular and clear. This time, he was going to save her. His eyes narrowed with absolute conviction, determined to succeed no matter what. His opponent, Inukai, scoffed at the notion. Mocking the idea of a rescue, he dismissed the thought and declared he would simply kill Yamamoto and feed him to the dungeon monsters. With a guttural roar, Inukai swung his massive axe, shouting a single, brutal command, "Die." The heavy blade sliced through the air, only to be stopped dead just inches from Yamamoto's face. Inukai stared in disbelief. Yamamoto's hand, now crackling with a strange, lightning-like energy, had caught the axe mid-swing, holding it effortlessly at bay. He then thrust his glowing hand forward, unleashing the power directly at his stunned opponent as he invoked his skill, Tame. His gaze is fixed on the terrified, gagged young woman, Aisaki Makoto, and her captor. The determination in his eyes is absolute. With his hand pressed firmly against Inukai's forehead, he channels the strange power, holding the stunned brood in place. Sweat beads on his temple as he issues a quiet but firm command. He tells Inukai to leave now, to never show his face to her again, and to never hurt anyone else. Inukai's response is a dismissive scoff, a puff of air that suggests the attempt was a complete failure. The energy seems to fade. Seeing this, one of Inukai's companions bursts into laughter, pointing mockingly. He calls Yamamoto an idiot, declaring that the tame skill is useless against humans. The same man, enraged by the perceived foolishness, screams at his leader. He questions if Inukai even understands his own skills and orders him to kill Yamamoto, to smash his skull. In response to the command, Inukai does nothing. His grip loosens, and his massive battle axe falls from his hand, the handle snapping cleanly in two as it hits the stone floor. The sudden inaction is baffling. Inukai turns his back on the fight, prompting his subordinate to ask what's wrong. He can only stammer, unable to comprehend his leader's behavior. Ignoring his confused followers, Inukai speaks with a monotone voice, announcing that he is going home. His companions stare, a question hanging in the air between them. His eyes are vacant, unfocused. A command is being executed within his mind, and he repeats his intention aloud. He is going home. He turns and walks away, announcing his intention to go home. His two companions, left behind with their captive, shout after him in utter disbelief, demanding to know what he is doing. Seeing their leader abandon them, the two remaining men panic. They shout one last time before turning tail and fleeing down the dungeon corridor, leaving the bound girl behind. With the immediate threat gone, Yamamoto kneels beside the captive girl. He assures her that it's okay now and offers a small glass vial, urging her to drink its contents. He watches her for a moment, his mind replaying the confrontation. He admits to himself that he acted purely on instinct, never truly believing his skill would actually work on a human. A new thought begins to form. He clenches his fist as a certainty dawns on him. This power is definitely not a normal tame skill. Cradling his slime companion, Q, he looks down with a gentle expression. He explains that he only did it because he wanted to help. Q, however, seems agitated. The slime insists that the potion must have been expensive and that it hadn't even been used yet. It declares a desire to repay him, but Yamamoto dismisses the notion, saying there's no need. He turns to the now recovered girl, Aisaki Makoto, and waves dismissively. He tells her that knowing she is safe is enough for him. She seems hesitant to accept this, clutching the fabric of her uniform, but she doesn't leave. Instead, she steps forward, her expression earnest and pleading as she makes a direct request. Will he form a party with her? The unexpected proposal catches him completely off guard. He can only stare back, a bead of sweat on his temple, utterly bewildered by the question. A man with spiky dark hair and a determined gaze makes a solemn vow. In this new life, he will only do what he wants to do, and he will not do what he doesn't want to. His firm resolve immediately clashes with the harshness of reality. He glares down at the gooey remains of a defeated slime, its core worth a paltry 500 to 800 yen. As he scoops up the remains, he concedes a crucial point to himself. He still needs money to live. His grand principle is thus amended. He will avoid doing what he doesn't want to do as much as he possibly can. The thought triggers a memory of a recent encounter. Inukai had appeared, mockingly asking if he was trying to play the hero. He had told the man to not bother them, as they were in the middle of something. The spiky-haired man had been caught completely off guard. In that tense moment, he had silently activated a skill, appraisal. His gaze swept over Inukai's party, taking in the details of the man holding a young woman captive. The appraisal identified the captive as Asazaki Makoto, an 18-year-old archer from the Black Wolf Pack. Back in the present, having been saved, she looks up at him with earnest gratitude, thanking him for his help. With the danger now past, he sits on the dungeon floor, sighing in relief. He turns to Asazaki, who kneels nearby, and asks if she is hurt anywhere. She quietly confirms that she is not. Asazaki, feeling indebted, insists that she will make sure to pay him back for the potion he used. He looks away, slightly flustered, telling her inside a weapons shop. The blacksmith Inagima Ayumi addresses the swordswoman Kokono Sakurako. Ayumi notes that the renowned Asakusa Knights are finally venturing into the Shinjuku dungeon and asks Sakurako how confident she feels about the expedition. She turns away, dismissing the question of confidence. To her, that's not the right way to think about it. She states plainly that wherever one goes, the law is simply survival of the fittest. As she heads for the exit, Sakurako offers her thanks and tells Ayumi to appreciate the blade. The blacksmith casually replies, anytime. After her customer's departure, Ayumi sits down, exhaling a plume of smoke from her cigarette with a heavy sigh. She muses that if one of her best customers is disappearing for a while, things are bound to change. The thought concludes as the view shifts to the shop's exterior. The place is going to get quiet, a prospect Ayumi finds to be a real drag. The scene changes to a bustling city street, where an ornate sign arching over the thoroughfare reads Explorer Alley. The alley is teeming with people, a vibrant marketplace filled with explorers browsing the various stalls and shops. Among the crowd, vendors call out to potential customers. A cheerful older man offers fresh eel that he claims keeps you going, while a younger man advertises his potions as the cheapest in town. A map reveals the nature of this location. Explorer Alley is a sanctioned guild marketplace, packed with shops for weapons, armor, and survival gear, conveniently located just a minute from Ueno Station. Within the bustling marketplace, Haruhisa Yamamoto surveys his surroundings with a weary expression. He reflects that Asazaki had told him this was the place to replace his broken weapon, but he hadn't anticipated the sheer scale of the area. His thoughts are interrupted by a voice calling his name. He turns, a questioning look on his face. It's Asazaki Makoto, who excitedly shoves her phone in front of him. She urges him to look, pointing out that according to the website she's viewing, a nearby shop has top-tier weapon rankings. He hesitates, admitting that he rather liked the atmosphere of the last place they visited. Asazaki, however, seems unconcerned, replying that anywhere is fine. Suddenly, her expression hardens with resolve. She declares that there's no way they're settling. If it's gear they're after, it must be from a proper dealer. With fierce determination, she promises to find him the perfect match. Following her lead, they find themselves at another stall where a vendor displays an assortment of swords and daggers. Asazaki points and discusses the options while Yamamoto looks on, clearly being guided by her expertise. After an extensive search, the effort has worn him down completely. Yamamoto bends over, panting from exhaustion. He hadn't realized shopping could feel like another battlefield. He straightens up, scanning the dense crowd. Calling out to Asazaki, he suggests they take a little break, but his question is met with silence. Looking around, he can't see her anywhere. The stark realization dawns on him. She's gone. Lost in the crowd, he tries to reassure himself that she'll reply soon enough. But a glance at his phone confirms his worry. He can't reach her. For now, he decides he just needs to find somewhere to sit. He pushed through the crowded street, his search for Asazaki proving fruitless. With a grim expression, he decided to proceed with his original task alone. His attention was then caught by a sign pointing down a narrow side alley. It advertised weapons and armor and bore the name he'd been looking for, Inagima's shop. Following the arrow, he found himself before a rustic building of stone and wood. He paused, confirming to himself that the place actually existed, and steeled himself to enter. As the heavy wooden door creaked open, the sound drew the attention of a woman inside. She paused her smoking, her gaze sharp and questioning as he peered in. Stepping fully into the shop, he saw walls lined with blades and armor. The woman exhaled a plume of smoke and offered a confident welcome, remarking that it had been some time since a new customer had found their way to Inagima's shop. She moved from behind her counter with surprising quickness, closing the distance between them. Leaning in, she got straight to the point, asking what kind of weapon he was searching for. Her imposing presence left him flustered. He began to sweat, stammering as he tried to explain his need for dual weapons, his words catching in his throat. She observed his reaction with a knowing look, remarking on how shy he was. Without waiting for an answer, she asked if she could take a look, reaching for him as he let out a startled cry of protest. Her grip was firm as she felt his arm and shoulder. After a moment of assessment, she hummed thoughtfully and commented on his sturdy build, much to his surprise. Her focus then shifted to his hands. Squeezing his palm, her demeanor turned professional as she identified the specific muscle tone of someone who had been overusing gilt-issued knives. She deduced he had worked them to the bone and now sought something real, asking if her assessment was wrong. She realized her forwardness, admitting she had forgotten to introduce herself. A flustered Haruhisa Yamamoto could only stammer in agreement, confirming her assessment of his situation was accurate. She formally introduced herself as Anagima Ayumi, the proprietor of the forge, expressing hope that he would become a regular customer. He, in turn, gave his name and confessed that he was just a beginner. Ayumi noted his distinct desk worker appearance, a comment he acknowledged with a self-deprecating laugh, admitting it was a common observation. With introductions out of the way, she declared it was time to talk business. She led him down a torchlit, winding stone staircase, deeper into the establishment. As he followed, he chided himself internally, realizing he was simply trailing after her without even explaining he was just browsing, much like he had done with Asazaka-san. He couldn't shake the feeling that this woman had him completely figured out. She was nothing like the burly, bearded blacksmith he had always imagined, a stark contrast to the powerful but refined woman walking ahead of him. As if reading his mind, she turned and correctly guessed he was wondering how someone with her build could possibly swing a hammer. Startled by her perception, he vehemently denied it. She promised to show him the forge later, but instructed him to first use his appraisal skill on her, suggesting the results would be eye-opening. He was taken aback that she even knew he possessed the appraisal skill. He recalled that while Explorer Alley had its exceptions, the guild did permit the use of basic skills within its bounds. He activated the skill, and a detailed status screen materialized before his eyes. It revealed her name, Anagima Ayumi, age 31, and a staggering level of 108. Her skills were numerous and incredibly high level, with blacksmithing and appraisal both at their maximum. As he stared in disbelief, she calmly asked if this display gave her words a little more weight. He stammered in protest as Anagima Ayumi began to casually list her personal measurements, starting with a bust size of 90 centimeters. Flustered, he insisted that was more than enough information. With a playful smile, she leaned forward slightly, asking if he wanted even more details. As a heavy door creaked open beside them, she finally relented, apologizing for teasing him and announcing their arrival. He stood frozen against the stone wall, his face a mask of utter shock, hands raised defensively. Ayumi couldn't help but laugh at his reaction, finding his flustered expression adorable. Inside a spacious, stone-walled chamber filled with tools, weaponry, and a large forge, the blacksmith Anagima Ayumi gestures proudly. She announces to Haruhisa Yamamoto that this is her workshop. He stands near the entrance, taking in the impressive, if somewhat cluttered, sight. She explains her craft, stating that she creates all kinds of weapons, with every piece being custom-made. Her work is entirely one-of-a-kind, as she tailors everything to the client's specific requests, budget, and even their preferred materials. Hearing this, Yamamoto expresses his uncertainty. He questions if she is sure about offering custom work to a complete novice like himself, pointing out that they haven't even discussed the budget yet. Anagima simply looks at him, her expression unreadable. He presses further, mentioning that her shop supposedly only sells to special customers or those referred by them. This exclusive reputation makes her offer to him all the more strange, and he asks why she would choose him. A small, knowing smile forms on her lips. In response, Anagima begins to explain the shop's secret. She reveals that the establishment is set up so that only certain kinds of people can perceive it, as the sign is concealed by a perception block. There's only one condition to even notice the shop, leading Yamamoto to realize that must be why he was able to see it. She confirms his unspoken conclusion, pointing a finger at him. The very fact that he made it inside means he must possess a unique skill. Anagima admits she likes people with rare or different qualities, and his arrival has piqued her interest, though the decision to place an order is still his. Yamamoto stands silently, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple as he processes the weight of her words. He quietly considers his options. Having made his decision, he explains that he still has some savings from his old office job. Anagima takes the money he offers, looking genuinely surprised. She remarks that she hadn't expected him to have a decent budget. Her demeanor shifts to one of intense focus. She surmises that he has no idea what materials to request, so she will simply appraise him herself. With a sharp look, she invokes her skill, appraisal. A status screen materializes, displaying the results of her skill. It reveals his full name, Yamamoto Harushige, age 38, and his status as a level 19 human. His skills are listed in full: hero control, appraisal, mental resistance, knife, LV4, evasion, LV4, search, LV3, fighting spirit, and instinct. Yamamoto stands by, his expression weary as his capabilities are laid bare. Her eyes narrowed as she processed his status. The garbled text she had seen was no mere taming skill. It was a unique skill. Her focus zeroed in on the name of the skill, her eye widening in shock as the true words became clear: dominion over all things. As she processed this startling revelation, her line of questioning began. She asked how long he had been an explorer, to which he thoughtfully replied it had been about a month. She then pressed him on how exactly his weapon broke. He explained that he had blocked a Cyclops' attack, and the blade had simply shattered. His answer sparked something within the blacksmith. At that moment, Ayumi and Nagima felt a question forming, accompanied by a stirring emotion. The source of his feeling was twofold. The first question stemmed from the corrupted text she had appraised, that glimpse of the phrase dominion over all things. Even as a 10-year veteran explorer, she had never seen anything like it. The second question arose from his incredible growth. Reaching level 19 in only 1 month was unheard of. However, she reasoned that if such strong growth was tied to a unique skill, it was at least plausible. But even with these astonishing facts, what struck Ayumi as most unusual wasn't the skill itself. It was the timing. Her thoughts turned to the broken blade. Cyclopes were powerful monsters, but their blows didn't normally break standard guild-issued weapons. Even with rough use, those blades were meant to last 6 months, perhaps a year. The fact that his broke was significant. The implication was clear. Before he even faced that Cyclops, within just 1 month, he must have swung that weapon thousands of times. Tens of thousands. As the thought crossed her mind, she saw the weariness on his face, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. This realization culminated in a sudden, intense feeling that rose up within Ayumi. She lunged forward, gripping his shoulder firmly. Startled by the sudden contact, he could only let out a gasp of surprise. He is held fast by the blacksmith, a Nagima Ayumi, whose face is alight with an intense, almost feverish excitement. She tells him he is truly something special, a sentiment born from a profound and genuine curiosity that has taken root within her regarding Haruhisa Yamamoto. This curiosity has always been her driving force. To chase the thrill of the unknown, Ayumi first became an explorer. To help people delve into that same unknown, she became a blacksmith. She has always been drawn to things she doesn't understand. And now, seeing him as the ultimate unknown, she makes a startling proposition. She tells him to forget the payment. This one is on her. She declares it a personal investment, driven by her desire to see just how far he can go. Yamamoto can only react with stunned disbelief. She solidifies her offer with a confident pose, formally introducing herself as Ayumi Inagima and vowing to personally craft his new weapon. Overwhelmed by the unexpected generosity, Yamamoto stammers his thanks. His gratitude is cut short, however, when she begins listing the requirements for making the best possible weapon for him. She explains that she has a lot to learn, needing to know his height, weight, muscle density, sword swing habits, and even his body odor, leaving him utterly flustered. Before he can protest, she leans in close, her expression one of fierce concentration, declaring that she will need to examine everything. Yamamoto can only manage a weak wait, as sweat pours down his face. Elsewhere, on a bustling street filled with explorers, Asazaki Makoto listens to Yamamoto's story with wide-eyed astonishment. She questions him, unable to believe he got a custom-made weapon for free. He confirms with a weary smile that a lot has happened, a small bandage now visible on his cheek. She remarks on his zombie-like appearance, asking if he's okay since his mouth was hanging open. Shaking off his exhaustion, his energy returns as he thinks about the new weapon. He tells her it will be ready in 3 days, just in time for their next expedition, and admits he's hyped to see what it looks like. As he gazes back at the sign for the Inagima workshop, a quiet, confident look settles on his face. He realizes the blacksmith feels the exact same way. Inagima Ayumi leans over a table cluttered with schematics and reference books, a small smile playing on her lips. With a pen in hand, she meticulously adds details to a design, her focus absolute as she confirms her analysis. Her work validates her suspicions, and she looks up from the papers, her eyes alight with professional excitement. She declares to the empty workshop that things are about to become far more interesting. Meanwhile, within the dilapidated halls of the Shinjuku dungeon, a voice echoes, attempting to piece together a confusing series of events. The speaker recounts how a seemingly ordinary, middle-aged explorer appeared unexpectedly and managed to tame their subordinate. The subject of this taming, Inukai, lies pinned to the floor beneath a heavy boot. He looks up in disbelief and frustration, questioning how this could have happened. He protests that not only has their companion date become a pacifist, but he was under the impression that the taming skill was ineffective against humans. Kneeling nearby, 2 of his associates offer a hesitant confirmation. One of them stammers that, under normal circumstances, taming indeed should not work on people, while the other simply hums in contemplation, unable to explain the anomaly. The leader, whose boot holds Inukai down, shifts his line of questioning to another matter. He asks about the Cyclops they had released into the dungeon's upper layer, reminding them of the plan to let it eliminate rookie explorers so they could loot the bodies. His subordinates exchange a nervous glance before one reports that the plan failed. The Cyclops, he explains, has already been defeated. The culprit, according to the rumors, was the very same middle-aged explorer. The leader's expression darkens. Without a word, he grinds his boot into Inakai's head, the pressure making the man cry out in pain and fear. One of the subordinates begins to stammer his leader's name, Kurogi, in alarm. He then lifts his foot, rising to his full height with a predatory smile spreading across his face. With a new target in mind, he decides it is time they paid a visit to this mysterious man and introduce themselves. 3 days pass. Back at the Inaguma workshop, Ayumi leans against a workbench, a pleased expression on her face as she addresses her client. She informs him that the test results are excellent, adding with genuine curiosity that he is a truly interesting individual. She presents the finished weapon, a formidable greatsword with an intricate, dark blade. Observing the man's handling of it, she remarks that based on his movements, it seems to be a good fit, and asks for his confirmation. However, the man holding the blade is clearly struggling. Sweat beads on his brow as he strains with all his might just to keep the massive weapon level, his arms trembling under its immense weight. His face contorts in a desperate shout, vehemently disagreeing with her assessment. He roars that it is absolutely not a good fit, exclaiming that a weapon like this is far too dangerous for him to handle. A young woman in a school uniform holds up her phone, displaying an image of Haruhisa Yamamoto equipped for a dungeon. Before her, Yamamoto himself stands with his back turned, a massive, ornate greatsword called the Black Ruler strapped to his back. A data overlay on the phone details the sword's properties. It's a 5-star two-handed sword with an auto-repair skill and a passive boost to his abilities, a weapon noted to be far beyond his means. The scene shifts to the interior of the Shinjuku dungeon, where the same young woman and another explorer find themselves cornered by two hulking, one-eyed monsters. As they stand back to back, a third beast lunges from the foreground, its clawed hand reaching for them. In response to the threat, she calmly stands her ground, longbow in hand. One of the Cyclopean monsters reels backward, a visible impact on its head indicating it has just been struck by a swift, precise arrow, stunning it momentarily. Seeing her shot has created an opening, she urgently shouts, "Now!" Her gaze is fixed on the dazed monster, signaling her partner to attack. Heeding her call, Yamamoto leaps from a higher ledge, yelling as he brings the Black Ruler down in a devastating overhead strike. The massive blade connects with the monster's head, shattering it on impact as his partner calls out his name. After the battle concludes, she turns to him with an admiring smile. She praises him, remarking that he has already gotten the hang of his powerful new weapon. He rests the great sword on his shoulder, wiping sweat from his brow. With a slight laugh, Yamamoto admits that it still feels less like he is using the sword and more like the sword is using him. A status screen materializes, identifying him as Yamamoto Harushige, age 38 and level 19, and listing his skills, including fighting spirit and intuition. Surveying the now quiet hall of pillars, one of them suggests they call it a day. The other voice quickly agrees. Their work in the dungeon complete, the scene transitions to the exterior of a modern, glass-fronted building under a daytime sky. Inside, Yamamoto and his partner stand before Kinomi Sakuraji at an appraisal counter, which is piled high with their haul of monster materials. Sakuraji greets them with a cheerful smile, congratulating them on their work and announcing that the dozens of items total a value of 140,500 yen. She then offers to prepare an itemized statement for them. Asazaki expresses her astonishment at how quickly their earnings are accumulating. Yamamoto, looking somewhat drained but pleased, remarks that what they made in a single day already surpasses his previous monthly salary. He then turns to her, suggesting she head home first while he goes over a few processing details with the clerk. Startled by the sudden dismissal, Asazaki stammers her agreement. Back at the counter, the guild receptionist, Kinomi Sakuraji, thanks Yamamoto for his patience and hands him a statement. As Asazaki watches from a short distance, Sakuraji brings up another, more serious matter. Yamamoto's expression hardens as he clarifies the topic: the arrest of the people who attacked Asazaki. He states grimly that he understands it's going to be difficult. The difficulty stems from the culprits themselves. The party, known as the Black Wolf Pack, has a history of such behavior. A memory flashes of Asazaki bound and gagged by her assailants. Because their crimes occur within dungeons, outside the guild's direct jurisdiction, gathering solid evidence against them is nearly impossible. Sakuraji offers a sincere apology, explaining that while the guild is on alert, there is little more they can do. Yamamoto, his back turned to her, quietly acknowledges the situation. He walks away from the counter, his thoughts turning dark. The quickest way to get rid of them, he muses, would be if they simply turned themselves in, an unlikely and ominous prospect. Just as he steps outside, Asazaki's voice cuts through his brooding. She calls out his name, having waited for him instead of going home. He turns, surprised to see her still there, and asks what's wrong. She hesitates, nervously clutching the strap of her bag, unable to immediately find her words. Gathering her courage, she looks up at him with a hopeful blush and asks if he would like to have dinner with her. She becomes flustered by her own forwardness, quickly trying to clarify her invitation. Stammering, She explains that her brothers are out for the evening, suggesting it's a good opportunity for them to get to know each other better. Yamamoto is taken completely by surprise. He considers her words, realizing they've never had a proper team bonding night. A small smile forms on his face as he agrees, saying it sounds like a good idea. She beams with delight, joyfully accepting his answer as they begin to walk. Asazaki insists that since she was the one who asked, she will be the one to pay for the meal. He gently refutes her offer, explaining that it should be the other way around. He sees this as his opportunity to properly thank her and insists on playing the role of the adult, telling her to order whatever she likes. As they walk away together down the street, neither of them notices a figure watching from a distance. Inukai, clad in a dark hoodie, speaks into a phone, his gaze fixed on the pair. Later, at a yakiniku restaurant, Yamamoto sits at a table laden with food and already stacked empty plates. His large battle axe rests against the booth beside him as he stares at the sizzling grill with a slightly overwhelmed expression. Across from him, Asazaki eats with enthusiasm. She pauses, noticing his lack of participation, and asks with concern if his stomach is all right, pointing out that he hasn't eaten very much. He gives a weary smile, explaining that this is simply what happens when one gets older. He tells her that just watching a young person enjoy their food is filling all by itself. He gestures toward the spread of dishes on the table, seemingly encouraging her to continue eating her fill. She looks back at him, a bit surprised by his sentiment. A waiter approaches their table to take another order, listing off various meats and side dishes. Asazaki's eyes light up with pure delight at the mention of more food, while Yamamoto watches her reaction with a tired but fond expression. She looks across the table at Yamamoto, her expression earnest as she offers her sincere thanks. He likely assumes she means the barbecue, telling her not to mention it and to order more if she likes. Flustered, she quickly clarifies that her gratitude is for something else entirely. Her gratitude stems from a far more dire situation. She recalls the events in the dungeon, how he saved her when she was attacked by a monster, and how she was subsequently captured. It is because of his intervention, she explains, that she is able to be here now, earning a living as an explorer. The memory fades, and her focus returns to the present. She looks at him directly, stating plainly that her current life is all because of him. Her heartfelt words hang in the air, the silence punctuated only by the sizzle of meat on the grill. Breaking the quiet moment, she apologizes for making things awkward. With a slight blush, she asks him to continue looking out for her. He smiles warmly and assures her that she can count on it. The meal concludes under the evening sky, leaving a feeling of deep satisfaction. Later, as they walk down a quiet street, she thanks him once more for the meal. He forces a smile, telling her he's glad she enjoyed it. Internally, however, a cold sweat breaks out as he realizes he severely underestimated a young explorer's appetite and the subsequent damage to his wallet. His strained expression does not go unnoticed. Asazaki looks at him with concern, saying she feels bad and asking if he's really sure about paying for everything. He frantically insists that he's fine, his composure beginning to crack. A young man in practical work gear offers some parting advice to a high school girl, telling her to take care of the younger ones once she starts working. With a bright smile, she enthusiastically agrees. He continues, musing that adults are meant to appear composed. His words are cut short as an imposing figure emerges from an alley's shadows, blocking their way. The stranger, wearing a dark, fur-collared jacket, issues a sharp command for the two of them to stop. They both halt abruptly, the young man caught mid-stride, while the girl looks on with growing concern. The stranger, a man with slick back, two-toned hair and a smirk, coolly asks who they are. He stands his ground, his posture an unspoken threat. With an air of finality, he declares that he has no intention of letting them simply walk away. The man with the two-toned hair crashed to the ground, spitting a spray of blood as he gasped for air. Nearby, the young archer watched with wide eyes as her companion stood over his defeated foe. The fallen man struggled, his hand trembling as he tried to push himself up. A wave of terror washed over him as he realized his body wouldn't move. With what little strength he had, he choked out a single word to his allies, "Run." He twisted his head to look at his subordinates, his voice cracking with desperation. He pleaded with them, asking what they were doing and begging for their help. His pleas were met with inaction. His two men, one bald with sunglasses and the other with spiky hair, stood motionless. One of them stated plainly that they were simply awaiting command. Abandoned by his crew, the defeated man's terror intensified. He flinched as a foot stepped close, his pleas turning into whimpers to be spared. The man in the work vest looked down, his expression cold and unwavering. He questioned the plea, asking if his opponent had ever stopped when the people he attacked had begged him to. His words struck a nerve. The man on the ground could only gasp, the hypocrisy of his situation dawning on him in a moment of pure shock. Ignoring the man's stunned silence, the victor gave a simple, firm command, "Stand up." He scrambled to his feet, his arrogant demeanor completely shattered. In a desperate bid for survival, he begged to be made a subordinate, promising to work for his new master, to kill for him, to do anything at all. He listened as the defeated man, Kirojairi, groveled before him, sweat beading on his bruised face. Kirojairi offered up his men and his money, desperately promising to do anything that was asked of him. The frantic promises escalated, with Kurojairi even offering to kidnap as many women as he wanted. His voice was a panicked plea, his eyes wide with terror as he awaited judgment. In response to the vile suggestion, he struck. A single, powerful blow drove into Kurojairi's stomach, silencing him instantly. With cold fury in his eyes, he warned the man not to say another word, especially not in front of Asazaki-san. As Kurojairi collapsed to his knees, trembling, he stood over him, his expression unyielding. He clarified that he had no intention of killing him. Instead, he declared Kurojairi would make proper amends. Asazaki watched the scene unfold. The following day, a news broadcast began, with the anchor announcing it was time for the morning's top stories. The report's lead story concerned the Explorers Guild Party, known as the Black Wolf Pack. The anchor announced that over a dozen members, including their leader, Kurojairi Kenji, had been taken into custody early that morning on suspicion of murder and corpse abandonment. As the news continued to play on a nearby screen, he and Asazaki sat together, eating a meal. The broadcast noted that just before their arrest, the group had been seen behaving strangely in front of the police station. He then explained to Asazaki what had transpired. After their confrontation, he had ordered Kurojairi to do 3 specific things. His first command was simple: never hurt people again. The second was for Kurojairi to gather all his subordinates who weren't present and have everyone turn themselves in to the authorities at dawn. And the final command, he revealed, was for the entire group to spend the night prostrated on the pavement, apologizing to their victims until the sun rose. Haruhisa Yamamoto sits across from Asazaki Makoto, offering an apology for how the recent conflict was resolved. She waves off his concern with a sigh, insisting that it's fine. She reminds him that, as she told him yesterday, she wasn't looking for revenge or anything of the sort. Despite her words, he remains somber. Asazaki concedes that, of course, she was scared during the ordeal, a memory of her being bound and gagged flashing through her mind. But that fear was tempered by something else. She recalls Yamamoto's reassurance, his promise that it would be okay and that she didn't have to worry. His words had given her strength. With a bright, confident smile, she declares that she believed in him completely. Because of that faith, she feels that perhaps she wasn't truly scared at all. Hearing her heartfelt declaration, he visibly relaxes, a faint smile touching his lips. He acknowledges her feelings, stating simply that it's good she feels that way. The conversation continues, with Asazaki remarking with a sigh that he is always the one saving her. He counters, insisting that she helps him a great deal as well. His response catches her by surprise, and she asks if he truly means it. He affirms her question with a simple, sincere yeah. As they eat, their attention is drawn to a nearby news broadcast. A special report announces that the strongest party, the Absolute Knights, is currently raiding the Shinjuku dungeon. Asazaki exclaims in excitement, realizing the famous explorers are active at this very moment. He stares at the screen, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He internally identifies the group as the Absolute Knights, recalling that they're the same explorers he encountered at the guild previously. On the screen he was watching, a news anchor introduced a special segment. It was an interview with Leon Kenzaki, the leader of one of the country's most powerful parties, the Absolute Knights, recorded just before their departure into a dungeon. The broadcast cut to the interview, where a reporter asked Kenzaki why a party as renowned as his would venture into such a simple dungeon. The armored leader simply chuckled, as if caught off guard. He began his response with a confident smile, explaining that in truth he held absolutely no interest in status or fame. He elaborated, placing a hand over his heart, stating that self-improvement was the sole reason he delved into dungeons. The fame that came with it, he admitted, had honestly become a bit troublesome. The explorer lamented that people now call out to him in town for autographs, making it impossible for him to fully relax outside the dungeons anymore. He concluded that this expedition into the Shinjuku dungeon was simply another step on his path of self-improvement, and that he would do his best to remain a role model for those who looked up to him. Watching the broadcast, Asazaki remarked that Kenzaki must be amazing, though she laughed nervously. Yamamoto, however, voiced his own impression. The man seemed a little shady to him. His skepticism lingered as he ate, contemplating the image presented on the screen. So that was the leader of the strongest party. But deep within the Shinjuku dungeon, on the 90th floor, the reality of the expedition was far from the confident interview. Kenzaki was battered and sweating, his face a mask of pure terror. The high-level explorer stood, wounded and vulnerable. A status assessment revealed his identity. Kenzaki Leon, level 148 of the Absolute Knights. Despite his impressive array of maxed-out skills, his health was critically low. He lay defeated on the dungeon's stone floor, looking up at the towering, monstrous form that had bested him and his entire party. The creature was an Ashura ogre, a level 166 behemoth with 6 arms, each wielding a sword. Its 6 eyes stared down impassively at the remnants of the Absolute Knights. The monster's status was normal, its health and stamina barely diminished. Its formidable skills included 6 sword style, presence detection, hardening, acceleration, and even magic nullification. As the ogre lunged forward in a blur of motion, its 6 blades descending at once, Kokono Sakurako moved to intercept, her own sword raised to meet the impossible assault. She deflected a blow, shouting back at her fallen leader. She warned Leon that at this rate, they wouldn't have enough hands to defend themselves, and urged him to get up and get to the front. Leon could only groan in response, his own sword broken beside him. The party's mage, Mika, clutched her staff and pleaded with Sakurako, insisting that they needed to retreat immediately. Sakurako clicked her tongue in frustration, her face grim. Turning back, she yelled at Leon again, this time with a single command, retreat. The word struck him with the force of a physical blow. He couldn't comprehend the idea. He remained on his knees, panting for breath. Sakurako, seeing his hesitation, ordered Mika to prepare the escape skill. Leon immediately shouted his refusal, declaring it impossible. His face was a mask of grim determination and shame. He argued that they were the absolute knights, the strongest party. If they were to retreat, their reputation would be ruined. Sakurako scoffed at his reasoning, yelling that this was no time to worry about such things. With a determined cry, she raised her katana high, preparing to block another devastating attack from the ogre. Her single blade met the combined force of the Ashura ogre's 6 swords, the impact sending sparks flying as she desperately held the line. She stares at the shattered hilt in her hand, the blade broken by the overwhelming force of the ogre. Ignoring her own precarious situation, she shouts an order to her comrade, Adachi, to take their injured leader, Leon. Leon, still dazed, can only stammer in protest. As Adachi hefts Leon over his shoulder to begin the retreat, Leon insists they won't leave her behind. Sakurako's voice cuts through his defiance, her command sharp and clear. They are to fall back immediately. With her party's safety secured for the moment, she turns her full attention to the enemy. She draws a shorter, secondary blade from its sheath, declaring her intent to hold the rear guard alone. The full, terrifying form of the Ashura ogre looms before her. It stands as a mountain of muscle and dark armor, all 6 of its arms spread wide, its swords crackling with a menacing energy. The beast attacks, unleashing a furious barrage of strikes from his multiple blades. With a sharp clang of steel, Sakurako meets the assault head-on, her small frame a defiant bastion against the storm. The ogre's 6 eyes remain fixed on her as she masterfully dodges and weaves between its deadly sword arcs. In the background, her party continues their retreat, with Mika the mage preparing an escape spell. She drops into a low, focused stance, gathering her energy. A whirlwind of power, like a blizzard of glowing petals, surrounds her as she prepares to unleash her ultimate technique, the cherry blossom snow dance. In a flash of movement, the technique connects, her blade striking the ogre's torso and forcing the massive creature to stumble. Believing she has found an opening, a flicker of hope appears in her eyes, but that hope shatters instantly. Her blade breaks apart against the monster's impossibly hard skin, the attack having done no damage at all. Her expression shifts to one of pure shock and disbelief. The Ashura ogre, completely unfazed, prepares its counter. Its 2 central swords begin to glow with immense power, poised to deliver a devastating horizontal slash against the now defenseless warrior. Its glowing blade descended, but before the final blow could land, a blinding flash of white light erupted between the monster and its prey. The force of the impact sent Sakurako skidding backward across the stone floor. She caught herself, planting a hand on the cracked flagstones. Despite the overwhelming odds and her broken weapon, her eyes burned with defiance as she vowed to eventually deal with her unseen savior. The following day, news spread through the explorer community. The formidable floor boss, the Ashura ogre, had successfully repelled an assault from the strongest party, the Absolute Knights, forcing them into a full retreat. Elsewhere, Leon Kanzaki observed the situation with a cool smile. With the top-ranked party out of the picture, he saw his opportunity. Well then, he declared to his companion, Mika, time to join the group. As he and Mika turned to depart, an onlooker wished them a safe trip, their voice tinged with envy at the prospect of At the Explorers Guild reception desk, Konomi Sakuragi offers a bright, professional smile. Holding out a document, she apologizes for the wait and announces that the appraisal is complete. In response, Haruhisa Yamamoto, standing beside Asazaki Makoto, accepts the results with a polite expression, thanking her for her service. As they turn away from the counter, Yamamoto's gaze drifts towards a commotion nearby. A small crowd of explorers, including Leon Kanzaki, has gathered, their expressions a mixture of shock and curiosity. He remarks to Asazaki that the guild has been unusually noisy lately, a sentiment Sakuragi overhears and confirms. Their conversation is cut short as a new figure strides into the hall. Kokono Sakurako, her face and clothes stained with blood, her expression severe as she walks through the crowded lobby. She approaches the counter, carrying a massive, damaged helmet bound in ropes, and requests an appraisal. Noticing Yamamoto and Asazaki, she offers a quick apology, but he assures her they had just finished their business. He stares, a bead of sweat forming on his temple, clearly unsettled by her battered appearance. Sakurako meets his concerned gaze with a silent, hardened stare of her own. His unease growing, Yamamoto tentatively asks if something is wrong, with Asazaki looking on with equal worry. Sakurako turns away, dismissing his question. No, sorry. It's nothing, she says flatly. She then informs the receptionist that she will return that night, leaving the appraisal fee and paperwork until then. A flustered Sakuragi can only agree. Without another word, she walks towards the exit. As she leaves, the other explorers watch her go, one of them identifying the warrior as a member of the prestigious Absolute Knights. The guild receptionist, Konomi Sakuragi, identifies the injured explorer as Kokono Sakurako. Asazaki, surprised, adds that she was a member of the renowned Absolute Knights. Yamamoto questions the use of the past tense. Sakuragi clarifies that after the Shinjuku dungeon incident, it seems Sakurako withdrew from the group. Since then, she has been on a solitary crusade, relentlessly hunting the bosses of unconquered dungeons all by herself, day after day. Asazaki wonders what the problem is, as from the guild's perspective, this is a great help. When a floor boss is defeated, the facility that had become a dungeon returns to its original state. However, Sakuragi reveals the downside. They have been flooded with complaints from other explorers who are using those places as hunting grounds. She sighs about the pain of dealing with all the responses and paperwork, then quickly asks them to pretend they didn't hear her complain. Yamamoto gazes out at the crowded street, lost in thought. He reflects on Kokono Sakurako, musing that even powerful people have their own circumstances to leave a party known as the strongest. His sudden quietness concerns Asazaki, who calls out his name and asks if he is all right. He quickly assures her he is fine and changes the subject, inviting her to come with him to get a new weapon. He tells her there's a shop he'd like to introduce her to, leading her to a storefront. Asazaki asks if this is where he acquired his own weapon. Yamamoto confirms it, adding that the proprietor told him she would also take care of his companion's weapons. Her eyes widen slightly at the implication. As she begins to respond, they stand before the entrance, clearly marked for weapons and armor. He leads the young archer through a narrow, industrial-looking alleyway, the high walls casting long shadows around them. Their walk concludes before a sturdy wooden door, beneath a sign identifying the establishment as the Inaguma shop. Stepping inside, they are met with a look of surprise from Kokono Sakurako, who recognizes them from their previous encounter. Beside her, the blacksmith Inaguma Ayumi observes their arrival with a calm, appraising gaze. The interior is a true armory, its brick walls lined with an array of swords, shields, bows, and armor, all meticulously crafted and displayed. Taking a drag from her cigarette, Inaguma remarks on the amusing coincidence. She notes that the young archer is today's customer and expresses surprise that two of her favorites, implying Yamamoto and Kokono, were already acquainted. Her attention then shifts directly to the young woman, who confirms her identity as the customer with a slightly nervous affirmation. The blacksmith assesses the bow the girl carries, noting that it appears well used and suits her perfectly. The young archer seems taken aback by the direct compliment. Turning to Kokono, Inaguma explains a complication. She has just received a prior order and informs them it will be some time before she can prepare what they need. The young archer quietly accepts the news, her expression turning somber as she and Yamamoto process the delay. As he stands there, Yamamoto senses a gaze upon him. He turns to find Kokono staring at him with an intense, unreadable expression, leaving him to wonder about her thoughts. He watches as Kokono Sakurako's hand rests on the hilt of her katana. Inside the blacksmith shop, the air grows thick with unspoken tension as she stands before them, a silent challenge in her posture, while Inaguma Ayumi observes from behind her desk. A palpable pressure suddenly emanates from her, an invisible force that seems to press down on Yamamoto and the young archer beside him. They both break into a cold sweat, their eyes wide with alarm at the sudden, overwhelming intensity radiating from the swordswoman. Her gaze is sharp and analytical, her expression unreadable as she silently assesses the two newcomers, who stand frozen and bewildered. The tense standoff is broken by the blacksmith's voice. Inaguma Ayumi calmly tells Kokono to stop, chiding her for picking on her favorites. Her words do little to clear their confusion. Yamamoto and the archer remain tense, still processing the sudden shift from hostility to casual conversation. Turning to face them, Kokono offers an apology, claiming she had no hostile intent and was merely testing them a little. Yamamoto, still wary, questions what she means by tested. In response, a faint, knowing smile touches her lips, her eyes shadowed and her thoughts unvoiced. She then turns her attention back to the blacksmith, addressing her as Ayumi. Kokono states that her own weapon can wait. This unexpected offer surprises the young archer, who asks if Kokono is certain. Kokono confirms her decision, but adds a condition, in return, leaving her request hanging in the air. The young archer and Yamamoto stood stunned as Kokono Sakurako finally stated her condition. With a confident smile, she made her request. She wanted to join their two-person party. Her unexpected proposal left both of them utterly speechless, their eyes wide with disbelief as they stood outside the shop. The next day, at the entrance to the overgrown ruins of the Shinjuku dungeon, Yamamoto was still mulling over the encounter, wondering why someone like Kokono would say such a thing. He recalled how she had simply instructed them to meet her at the dungeon the next day, and then promptly went home, leaving them in a state of confusion. He voiced his thoughts to the archer, speculating that there must be some kind of veteran's reasoning behind it that they couldn't understand. In any case, he concluded, with Kokono on their team, they should be able to hunt much more efficiently. The archer hesitantly agreed. Meanwhile, the young archer admired her new weapon, the 5-star Heaven's True deer-slaying bow, complete with an auto-repair skill. The impressive gear served as a powerful motivator. She knew she needed to earn enough money to pay for it. Inside the dungeon, Yamamoto asked how the bow felt. She confirmed that although she hadn't used it in combat yet, it was remarkably light and fit perfectly in her hands. Their conversation was interrupted by an approaching figure. Kokono had arrived, apologizing for the wait. Yamamoto turned to greet her, simply saying, "Nice." He trailed off, his eyes widening in surprise. Kokono had completely changed her attire, now wearing a modern and revealing set of battle gear. As Yamamoto stammered her name, she coolly confirmed that this was her combat outfit. Her straightforward explanation left Yamamoto blushing and flustered, only able to stammer out an acknowledgement as the archer looked on. He stammers, taken aback by her minimal attire, noting that it's a very light set of equipment. Beside him, Asazaki Makoto asks if Kokono Sakurako needs any armor. In response, Sakurako confidently declares that she doesn't need any. Her strategy, she explains, is simply to avoid getting hit. Both Yamamoto and Makoto are stunned into silence by her bold statement. She then apologizes for the suddenness of her request and asks them to call her by her first name, Sakurako, breaking the formal tension. Continuing, she explains that she dislikes how stiff written names sound and decides she will call them Harushige and Makoto as well. Faced with her directness, Harushige can only manage a quiet, slightly flustered agreement. Makoto remains silent, observing the exchange. Taking the opportunity, Makoto turns to him and asks if she, too, may call him Harushige-san. He smiles warmly and agrees, of course. Beaming with delight, Makoto tells him he can call her by her first name as well, and he confirms that he will. The newly formed party proceeds into the dungeon, arriving on the 31st floor. It is noted that Harushige is level 48, while Makoto is level 40. Inside the cavern, Sakurako assesses their strength. She declares that with their levels, they should have no trouble pushing through to the 40th floor without stopping. Just as she finishes speaking, a large creature appears nearby. A confident smile spreads across her face as she remarks on the perfect timing, while Harushige and Makoto hesitantly agree, startled by the sudden encounter. He and his companions were confronted by a colossal snake, its scaled body coiled within the cavernous space of the 31st floor. It towered over Kokono Sakurako, its forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. The sight of the massive serpent left Yamamoto and the archer stunned. Sakurako, however, remained unfazed, turning to her new party members and calmly telling them to leave this one to her. A bewildered Yamamoto could only stammer, questioning what she was. She offered a confident smile, suggesting they think of it as her self-introduction. In the next instant, the giant snake lunged, its massive jaws snapping open, but Sakurako moved with impossible speed, meeting its attack head-on. The beast recoiled as its head slammed into the ground, missing its target completely. Its eye narrowed, focusing on the small figure who had so easily evaded its strike. She stood just before its snout, her katana partially drawn. With a smirk, she informed the creature that it was now within her range. As she spoke, the blade slid free from its scabbard with a sharp ring. A flash of steel sliced through the air. The snake's massive body was struck in multiple places almost simultaneously. Sakurako, now standing a short distance away, sheathed her sword with a click, muttering to herself that she should have used a flashier move. The giant snake crashed to the ground, motionless. Sakurako looked over her handiwork, remarking that the monster looked quite impressive. A status display materialized beside her, revealing her name, Kokono Sarako, her level of 139, and a long list of advanced skills. Watching from a safe distance, Yamamoto and the archer could only stare, their mouths agape in utter disbelief at the instantaneous victory. She turned back towards them, a confident grin on her face, and casually asked if the demonstration had suited their tastes. The snake's corpse lay on the cavern floor, a massive, clean-cut wound gaping in its side as smoke-like energy dissipated. From off-panel, Yamamoto's voice stammered in reply that yes, it very much had. Breaking the stunned silence that followed her display of power, Kokono Sakurako turned to her new party members, stating that she had been curious about something. Her words prompted the young archer to immediately ask the pressing question. Why did she leave the prestigious Absolute Knights? The archer pressed further, her hand to her chest as she voiced their shared confusion, asking why, of all groups, Sakurako had chosen to join their party. As they ventured deeper into the cavern, Sakurako agreed to explain, promising to answer one question at a time, starting with her reason for leaving the Knights. She stated it plainly, her gaze fixed forward. The only reason she left was because that party had no future. Her blunt assessment left the archer speechless, questioning what she meant. Sakurako elaborated, dismissing their leader, Kenzaki Leon, as nothing more than a paper tiger. She explained that Leon had likely only hunted weak monsters to raise his level. Because he never fought challenging enemies, he lacked the crucial mindset needed to confront truly powerful foes. This critical flaw, she continued, meant that he would freeze up against opponents he should have been able to defeat, even when fighting with all his might. Bringing her explanation to a close, she glanced back at her new companions. She asserted that they were different from Leon, a fact she had recognized the moment they met. She told them directly that they possessed the look of people who had survived hellish battlefields, that they had fought with everything they had. He and the archer listened as Kokono Sakurako explained her reasoning. She notes that he reacted properly to the faint killing intent she had released back at the Inaguma shop, a test he seemingly passed without realizing it. His expression remains tense as she continues her internal assessment, recognizing that there is something more to this man, something separate from his documented level or experience. She concludes her thought with a firm conviction. He is hiding some kind of trump card. It is a feeling she cannot shake. Her mind drifts to a memory of Inaguma Ayumi, who had called the man a favorite. Sakurako now suspects the reason is most likely a unique skill he possesses. Returning to the present, she turns her back to them, gazing into the dungeon's depths. She declares that her dream, as a martial artist, is to become stronger no matter what it takes. Her ultimate goal, she explains, is to conquer the 90th floor, honing her skills by fighting ever stronger monsters along the way. To achieve that, she clenches her fist, stating that she needs companions who share the same resolve, allies who will seek strength and challenge their limits side by side with her. She turns back to them, her eyes burning with intensity. She proclaims that she can tell, just by looking at them, that together they can reach the pinnacle of the martial path. The passionate declaration hangs in the air. Realizing she may have been too intense, Sakurako admits she got a little carried away, explaining that this is her reason for wanting to team up with them. He stammers in response, clarifying that they don't really have any intention of aiming for the deep floors. The archer agrees, adding that they're fine as long as they can earn enough to cover living expenses. Sakurako is left utterly speechless, her jaw agape in disbelief. She stood frozen in disbelief, arms slightly outstretched as if to physically grasp the absurdity of the situation. Beside her, Haruhisa Yamamoto and the young archer broke into a cold sweat, their expressions a mixture of confusion and alarm. Recovering quickly, she pressed a hand to her forehead, forcing a smile. She insisted that she didn't mind at all, trying to brush off the awkwardness by claiming it was fine even if they weren't aiming for the deeper floors. Her resolve hardening, she declared that for now, they would simply move forward. Then, with a determined glint in her eye, she corrected herself, proclaiming that someday they would conquer the Shinjuku dungeon as a party that walks the same path. Behind her, Yamamoto and the archer had already turned and begun to walk away. As they walked, the archer leaned toward Yamamoto, admitting she felt uneasy. He shared her sentiment, his own expression clouded with worry. The stark difference in their intentions was becoming a source of great concern. Elsewhere, a confident adventurer with shaggy, light-toned hair named Kurogi observed another party from a distance. A smirk played on his lips as he announced to his companion, a young mage named Mika, that it was time to join the group. His group watched as a knight in full-plate armor knelt before a female comrade. Mika wished them a safe trip, but Kurogi's thoughts were elsewhere. He muttered that they couldn't have many releases without them, hinting at a more within a rocky, desolate landscape. Adachi and a young archer are engaged in combat, their expressions taut with focus. They find themselves on the 40th floor of the Shinjuku dungeon, facing a colossal, heavily armored crab-like monster that towers over them. In response, Adachi thrusts his hand forward, shouting commands to his slimes, Ichiro, Jiro, and Saburo. As he and the archer leap apart, the slimes swarm the creature's legs. The archer vaults high into the air, loosing an arrow that strikes the monster's head with explosive force. From safe distance, Kokono Sakurako watches the coordinated assault unfold. After the battle, the archer thanks Adachi. Sakurako, however, approaches with a compliment on his impressive moves, but her expression is inquisitive. She asks why he doesn't simply increase the number of monsters he tames, leaving Adachi momentarily speechless. He looks at her as she presses the point, specifically asking why he doesn't make more use of the skill he mentioned earlier, domination of all things. He begins to explain its benefits, noting that its control level is high and it shares experience points. More importantly, it works on any target, whether human or monster, even on someone stronger than himself. Sakurako processes this, concluding that the skill sounds entirely beneficial and questions his hesitation to use it. Adachi touches his chin, admitting to her that there's a part he still hasn't explained. He reveals the first major drawback. The skill consumes a massive amount of MP upon activation. Furthermore, if he uses it on a target stronger than himself, he will be completely immobilized for a while afterward. Elsewhere, Kirojiri Kenji smirks, discussing the very same ability. He adds another critical detail. There is a delay between activating the skill and completing the taming. He speculates that the stronger the target, the longer this delay will be. Continuing his explanation inside the cavern, Adachi reveals another critical drawback of his skill to Sakurako. He states with grim finality that on top of everything else, the effect of domination of all things is permanent and cannot be undone. His expression softens slightly as he considers the practicalities. He explains that while he can secretly tame and bring along small monsters, it would become a significant hassle if they were larger or if their numbers increased. Meanwhile, Kirojiri Kinji casually discusses the same subject with his own companions. He muses that the people he has already used the skill on are likely still awaiting his orders, but notes that because of the great distance, he doesn't benefit from any shared experience points. Back in the cavern, Sakurako processes the moral implications of such a power. She admits that, on a personal level, she dislikes the idea of forcing others to obey her commands, even if the target were a villain. He affirms her sentiment, his expression hardening with conviction. He states plainly that, if at all possible, he has no desire to use his domination skill frequently. His declaration hangs in the air as both Sakurako and the young archer listen intently to his resolve. Sakurako thoughtfully touches her chin, audibly summarizing the key points for herself. She now understands the significant drawbacks, the activation cost, the delay before the effect takes hold, and its irreversible nature. With her understanding solidified, she turns to Adachi with a sudden, intense gaze. She makes an astonishing request, asking him to use that very domination skill on her. Her proposal is met with immediate, wide-eyed disbelief. Adachi shouts, "What?" his shock mirrored on the young archer's face. The archer, flustered, is the first to speak, calling out to Sakurako and reminding her that Adachi just explained the effect is permanent. Sakurako calmly replies that she is fully aware of the risks involved. Adachi counters her request, pointing out that it also means he doesn't fully understand the skill yet. The young archer beside him gasps in surprise at the conversation's turn. She remains firm, arguing that relying on an unexplored ability is not reassuring. A desperate situation could arise at any moment, and when that time comes, they need to know exactly what the skill can and cannot do. Therefore, she insists he should test it on her as a member of his party. He seems to understand her logic. Seeing his reluctant acceptance, she clarifies that they won't test it there in the dungeon. For now, she suggests they should head back to the surface. She turns to him with a reassuring look, telling him not to worry about the fact that the skill is irreversible. She has something in mind. His gaze lowers as he contemplates her words. If that's truly the case, then perhaps he has no other choice. He looks at his own hand, acknowledging to himself that she is right. There is still so much he doesn't understand about this skill. He realizes he must know its limits for when it really matters. With a quiet resolve, he agrees. The following day, the party arrives at a designated training floor in the shallow layers of the Shinjuku dungeon. The young archer looks around the large, constructed room in amazement, remarking that she didn't know such a place existed. She explains that since using skills or weapons on the surface is prohibited, this is the kind of place where explorers come to test them. The archer can only say, "Wow." She confirms her readiness with a simple, "All right." Then, with a determined look, she adds a condition, just to make sure. She reminds Adachi and Mika that there is a level difference of 91 between them, and that she also possesses the mental resistance skill, setting the high stakes for this test. Standing in the vast, empty training hall, Sakurako outlines the experiment's goals. To measure the SP consumption of domination of all things, determine any activation delay, and confirm if it even works at all. Adachi quietly agrees. He takes a steadying breath, a bead of sweat on his temple. "All right then," he murmurs, raising his open palm toward Sakurako, who watches him, unflinching. With a surge of crackling energy, he invokes the skill, shouting, "Domination." He immediately groans as his SP plummets from 1503 to 773, confirming his suspicion of its immense cost. Unaffected, Sakurako asks about the result. He can only stare in silence, sweat trickling down his face. Sakurako stands before him, her expression completely unchanged, showing no outward sign of being dominated. She examines her hands and touches her chest, pondering the outcome. She wonders aloud if the effect is merely delayed, or if the ability failed to work at all. Adachi explains that when he previously used it on a stronger opponent, the effect took about 10 seconds to manifest. Mika observes that 30 seconds have already passed. Sakurako reaches a conclusion. The ability, it seems, is not all-powerful. She reasons that either her mental resistance skill or the overwhelming level difference was enough to completely negate it. Her gaze narrows as she considers the implications. She had wondered if the skill might even work on that thing, her mind conjuring an image of the six-armed Ashura ogre. She looks on, puzzled, as Adachi expresses his relief that the skill failed. He explains that if it had worked on someone as beautiful as her, he would have been compelled to obey her every command. The young archer beside him quietly considers the implications of such a power reversal. Her expression shifts as she processes his words, acknowledging that, yes, that would have been the outcome. The full weight of the skill's potential suddenly dawns on her, her eyes widening in shock at the concept of absolute obedience. Adachi quickly tries to reassure her, insisting he would never use such a power on her. But Sakurako seems to have misinterpreted his concern, muttering that he wouldn't be giving her any orders yet. Before he can react, she lunges forward, grabbing him by his vest with surprising force. Both Adachi and the archer are stunned by her sudden action. He stares in confusion as she clings to him, desperately pleading for him not to withhold his commands. Her face is flushed, her eyes pleading as she looks up at him, begging him to give her any order he desires and proclaiming him her master. The unexpected declaration sends a shockwave through Adachi and the archer, their faces contorting in a shared expression of utter disbelief. After the commotion subsides, the three stand in the stone chamber, Sakurako still attached to a bewildered Adachi. He attempts to regain his composure and summarize the results of their experiment. He concludes that even against a high-level target like Sakurako, who possesses the mental resistance skill, his domination ability can still succeed, albeit with a delay of approximately 1 minute. He listens as Asazuki Makoto pieces it together, realizing that commands can be received during the delay between the skill's activation and the effect taking hold. His train of thought is interrupted when Kokono Sakurako enthusiastically confirms the theory, addressing him as my master. The realization dawns on him with a sweat drop. The careless command for absolute obedience had actually worked. He blurts out a flustered request, asking her to stop calling him that. In response, Sakurako leans in closer, questioning his request while still calling him master. Asazaki shouts at her for standing too close, as Adachi internally wonders if Sakurako's mental resistance skill is somehow twisting the effect of his domination. Now in the bustling Explorer Alley, Sakurako composes herself. She explains that since she was ordered to carry on as normal, she must address how to undo the skill's effect, proposing the use of a dispel item. He asks for clarification, and she explains that a dispel item cures abnormal statuses like curses. She continues, still addressing him as my master, stating that since she didn't have one on hand, they came here to purchase it. He cautiously asks about the price. Sakurako reassures him that while it's more expensive than the potions they typically use, it's not a problem. Her casual estimate of 800,000 to 900,000 yen, regardless of the shop, makes his jaw drop. He shouts in disbelief at the insanely expensive price. As Asazaki shares his shock, Sakurako remains unfazed. She calmly suggests that hunting on the 80th floor would allow them to earn that amount back quite quickly. Their search, however, hits a snag. Inside a well-appointed shop, a man in a suit bows deeply, offering his sincerest apologies to Kokono-sama. He informs her that, at the moment, the Dispel Stone is completely out of stock. The search for a Dispel item continues to be fruitless. At yet another shop, the staff can only offer apologies. The male shopkeeper explains they haven't had any in stock recently, while his female colleague adds that it's a rare item. Haruhisa Yamamoto listens, as they confirm they have no estimate for when it might be restocked. The weight of this failure falls heavily on Sakurako. She bows deeply, her voice filled with anguish as she apologizes profusely to her master, declaring that this entire situation is her mistake. Seeing her distress, Adachi tries to console her. He waves his hands dismissively, telling her it can't be helped and that it's unusual for every single place to be out of stock. Asazaki watches them, her expression concerned. He continues, his tone growing more serious. He acknowledges that this is a problem, as they have no idea when the taming effect on Sakurako will wear off. He expresses his desire to undo it sooner rather than later. He then reveals a final option. Aside from waiting for shops to restock, there is one other way to obtain a dispel item. Asazaki looks on with surprise as Sakurako's head snaps up, her attention captured. She turns to face Adachi, her expression resolute. She declares that she will go and obtain it directly from the dungeon herself. The path she speaks of leads into the depths of the Shinjuku dungeon. It is known that dispel items can be found on the 60th floor, albeit rarely. This rarity is precisely why they are so expensive and why their supply is so unstable. Having made her decision, Sakurako formally addresses her new party. She apologizes for asking this so soon after they formed, but requests that they allow her to step away for a little while. She promises to return as soon as she acquires a dispel item. Before she can leave, Adachi stops her. With a determined look, he tells her to let him go with her too. Sakurako looks at him, surprised. He explains his reasoning. She came up with this test for the party's sake, and, as the party's leader, he bears the responsibility. More importantly, he states, this problem was ultimately caused by his own skill. As he stood firm in his decision to accompany Sakurako, Asazaki suddenly interjected, her expression determined as she declared that she was coming as well. She placed a hand on her chest, her voice filled with conviction as she insisted that she was a member of the party and refused to be left out of the important mission. Her plea was met with immediate resistance. Adachi stated he couldn't allow her to join him right now. Sakurako elaborated, explaining that facing monsters on the 80th floor would be too difficult with Asazaki's current strength, and that she couldn't guarantee her safety. Sakurako paused, her expression softening slightly as she began to offer compromise. She proposed a condition. If Asazaki trained until she was strong enough to fight on the 80th floor, then the three of them could challenge the dungeon together. Looking directly at Asazaki, she asked if the terms were acceptable. Asazaki's response was a firm and immediate yes. With the agreement settled, a sense of accord fell over the group. Sakurako then laid out the new plan for them both. For the time being, their focus would be on leveling up. Once they were ready, their objective would be to retrieve a dispel item from the 80th floor. Yamamoto watched from the side as Adachi rallied the newly united party, encouraging them to do their best without getting hurt. Asazaki cheered in agreement, ready to begin. Unseen by them, Leon Kanzaki watched from distance. He clicked his tongue in annoyance, muttering Sakurako's name with a look of clear disdain. Deep within the Shinjuku dungeon's lowest layer, a formidable creature stands ready. The six-armed Ashura ogre, a demon of immense power, grips a sword in each of its hands, its posture coiled for battle. From the shadows, a figure watches. A young woman, her eyes hidden by her bangs, smiles with sharp anticipation. She can sense a particular presence from her position, chuckling to herself as it draws near. Her senses are not mistaken. Seated upon a stone throne and flanked by demonic guards, Aisaki Makoto awaits her quarry. With a confident smirk, she beckons them forward, eager to meet the bearer of the domination skill. Meanwhile, far from the dungeon's depths, Leon Kinzaki observes another group of explorers. A faint, condescending smile plays on his lips as he decides his next move, declaring it's time to join them. He approaches the party, where Mika, the young mage, looks up at him with admiration. She expresses her envy and wishes him a safe trip, seemingly unaware of his. The structure of the Shinjuku dungeon is well documented. The ground level and its surroundings are managed by the guild. Below that lies a training floor, which can be used freely upon request. The upper levels contain relatively weak monsters, but remain largely unexplored. Deeper still, beyond the 80th floor, a valuable dispel item has been found, capable of removing curses and ailments. However, exploration has not progressed past the 90th floor, where the undefeated floor boss, an Ashura ogre, resides. Should this boss ever be defeated, the dungeon is expected to revert to its original state. On that very training floor, deep within the upper levels of the dungeon, two figures engage in a sparring match, their blades clashing in the cavernous stone chamber. Haruhisa Yamamoto grips his large sword with both hands, sweat beading on his brow as he faces off against the swordswoman, Kokono Sakurako, who holds her katana with practiced ease. He lunges forward, planting his foot firmly on the stone floor, his expression a mask of intense concentration as he prepares to strike. From across the room, Makoto Asazaki draws her bow and releases an arrow. Sakurako's head whips to the side, her eyes instantly locking onto the incoming projectile. She reacts with impossible speed, raising her katana to effortlessly deflect the arrow, sending it spinning away harmlessly. Asazaki's eyes widen in astonishment at the casual display of skill. Without missing a beat, Sakurako pivots back towards Yamamoto, her blade already moving to meet his in another ringing clash of steel. The spar concludes. Sakurako, identified as level 139, calmly sheaths her sword and offers her critique to the level 79 Yamamoto. She informs him that his attack was 2 seconds too slow and his step-in lacked depth. Yamamoto, catching his breath, acknowledges her points. Her attention then shifts to Makoto Asazaki, level 70. Sakurako bluntly states that Asazaki's stance after firing a shot is terrible, leaving her full of openings. The young archer can only agree nervously. Looking at them both, Sakurako concedes that after 3 days of training, she has to say they both possess real potential. Yamamoto listens, silently wondering if that could possibly be true. He listens as Kokono Sakurako explains that fighting monsters depends on a party's teamwork. She believes that since he has made it this far, he should be fine, but emphasizes that this kind of coordination training is crucial. With their training concluded, she confidently declares that they should now be able to head for the 80th floor. Both he and Makoto Asazaki respond with a resounding yes. Asazaki excitedly reminds him that with the dispel item they can find there, they will finally be able to remove the taming effect he placed on Sakurako. Yamamoto agrees, his expression hardening with resolve as he prepares to finally make the attempt. Overhearing their conversation, Sakurako insists that she is fine as she is, but Asazaki loudly objects, shouting that there is no way they will leave her like that. Yamamoto can only manage a strained laugh in response. The next morning, he stands alone in the bustling Adventurers Alley Central Square, contemplating the path ahead. As the group reconvenes, Sakurako takes charge, telling them to prepare for the following day and buy any necessary supplies. She informs them that she will be going to the Anaguma shop to pick up a sword she had requested. He sighs, the weight of their goal settling in. The 80th floor. He anticipates that it will be far more difficult than anything he has faced before. His mind wanders back to when he was laid off from his job. With nothing else to do, becoming an adventurer seemed like a viable option, as he felt he had nothing left to lose. He considers the strength of their companion. Sakurako is a former member of the number 1 party, the Absolute Knights. She is incredibly powerful and experienced, and this is not her first venture to the 80th floor. He sighs again, his thoughts turning to Asazaki. While Sakurako chose to come with him, he knows Makoto's situation is different. She is only doing this work for her family, and he feels a heavy responsibility not to put her in unnecessary danger. He walked through the bustling street, his thoughts consumed by a single, resolute purpose. He had to take care of Makoto. Beside him, Makoto Asazaki seemed flustered, her cheeks flushed as she walked, unaware of his inner monologue. Breaking from his reverie, He turned to her and offered a simple greeting for the morning. His casual words, however, provoked an unexpectedly strong reaction. She stopped abruptly, her face a mixture of shock and embarrassment, demanding to know what he had just said and questioning why he would simply say morning. As her outburst continued, Kokono Sakurako appeared, dryly commenting on how lively the two of them were first thing in the morning. Utterly confused, Yamamoto asked if he had said something peculiar, but Makoto insisted that wasn't the problem. He shifted his attention to the newcomer, greeting Sakurako as well. Now that the group was assembled, he suggested they get going. Their destination was a sturdy, stone-fronted building with a wooden sign identifying it as the Yatsuguma shop. Inside, Sakurako held her new weapon, a finely crafted katana. A status screen materialized, revealing its name as Sakura Flash, an 8-star Tachi with impressive stats and skills, including a mysterious ability release. The blacksmith proudly declared it the best weapon she had ever made. Sakurako marveled at the incredible 8-star rating. Her gaze fixed on the last skill listed, and she turned to the blacksmith, Inaguma Ayumi, to ask what ability release was. Taking a drag from her cigarette, Inaguma admitted that the ability wasn't something she had forged into the blade. She theorized that it was a special property granted to the sword specifically because Sakurako was its wielder. Inaguma suggested she test it on a dummy, confirming that it at least wasn't a debuff. Sakurako, however, lowered the blade with a look of intense focus. She declined the offer, stating she didn't need to. With quiet confidence, she simply said, "I like it." She gazes at her new blade, a fierce determination in her eyes. With this weapon, she thinks she might finally be able to take the head of a formidable foe. Haruhisa Yamamoto, standing beside her, notices the intensity in her expression, murmuring her name and commenting on her eyes. As they turn to leave the workshop, the blacksmith, Inaguma Yumi, calls out to the group, a cigarette held loosely in her hand. She explains that the three of them are her regulars, and it would be a real loss to lose them. Though she claims not to be one to worry, she gives him a stern, heartfelt command. Come back alive. Touched by her concern, Yamamoto and Makoto Asazaki respond with a bright, unified yes. With a final wave, the blacksmith sees them off. Now outside, Sakurako declares that all they need to do is finish their shopping. Yamamoto, energized, clenches a fist and announces their destination. The Shinjuku dungeon awaits. Their preparations complete, the trio ventures into the rocky entrance of the dungeon. Their expressions a mix of determination and anticipation. Deeper within the cavern, they are ambushed. Giant, scorpion-like monsters swarm them, and the party leaps into action. Yamamoto with his greatsword, Asazaki with her own blade, and Sakurako lunging forward with a spear. The battle rages. Sweat beads on Yamamoto's brow, and a drop of sweat rolls down Asazaki's cheek as they face the monstrous onslaught. Having survived the initial assault, the party finds a moment of respite. They gather around a small campfire in a cavernous chamber, taking a moment to rest and recover before pressing on. Yamamoto looks up towards the dark passage ahead, contemplating their next move. He surveys the vast, pillared hall on the 70th floor of the dungeon and decides it's a defensible position. He announces to his party that they will make camp there for the day. Gathered around a small campfire, he checks on his companions, noting they've been inside the Shinjuku dungeon for 2 days now. He turns to Aisaki Makoto and asks how she's holding up physically. She admits that while nothing feels specifically wrong, her body does feel a bit heavy. Kokono Sakurako listens and remarks that it's no surprise. Fatigue can easily accumulate when exploring a cave-type dungeon for an extended period. Hearing this, Makoto apologizes, worried that she is slowing the party down. Yamamoto quickly reassures her, insisting they take things slow. The well-being of all party members, he states, is the #1 priority. Makoto looks up, relieved by his words. Sakurako adds that their pace isn't bad at all. Gazing into the crackling fire, Makoto quietly says she's glad. The quiet moment is shattered by an unfamiliar voice echoing from the corridor. It announces that they have finally been found. The three of them turn sharply toward the sound. From the darkness emerges another party, led by a confident young man in plate armor. Yamamoto's eyes widen in recognition. Sakurako's expression hardens as she confronts the newcomer, demanding to know what Leon wants. He responds with a slow, knowing smirk, asking rhetorically if what he wants isn't obvious. In an instant, glowing chains erupt from the stone floor, wrapping tightly around Yamamoto and Makoto. They both cry out, caught completely by surprise and unable to move. With his target secured, Leon stands flanked by his own party members. He spreads his arms and addresses Sakurako directly, his voice triumphant. "I came here to get you back." He clarified his objective, for Kokono Sakurako to rejoin his party, the Absolute Knights. His demand was underscored by the sight of Haruhisa Yamamoto and Aisaki Makoto, both still kneeling and bound by the magical chains. He then addressed Sakurako directly, laying out his terms with a confident smile. He would spare the lives of her new companions, but only if she agreed to come back and rejoin his party. The threat hung heavy over the two captives. Makoto's face was etched with fear, while Yamamoto could only glare, his jaw tight with impotent fury. Sakurako's response was laced with contempt. She accused him Leon, of having fallen so far. He quickly refuted the claim, insisting with a strained smile that he was only thinking of her best interests. He pressed on, his tone turning persuasive and complimentary. He declared that a beautiful and strong woman like her should be accompanied by an equally strong and handsome man, a man like himself. His gloved hand extended toward her in a gesture of invitation. He added that the two of them, side by side, would look far better in front of the cameras, revealing a concern for public perception. She met his appeal with cold disdain, remarking that appearances were all he had ever cared about. She then cut him to the core, advising him to train more so his knees wouldn't give out before an Ashura ogre again. Her words struck a deep nerve. Leon recoiled, his face contorting with anger as he sputtered a defense, shouting that their retreat that time was only because they had lacked the necessary supplies. His defensive outburst escalated into a roar of self-aggrandizement. He proclaimed that with his current, perfect preparations, floor bosses were nothing to him. His voice echoed through the chamber as he declared himself the strongest. His defensive roar echoes through the stone chamber, but Haruhisa Yamamoto remained silent, looking up from the cracked floor where he is bound. Nearby, Leon's two companions, a female mage and a man in clerical garb, watched the tense standoff with expressions of deep concern. The mage, identified as Megumi Katori at level 96, realizes that any attempt to use a taming skill is impossible. She has neither the SP nor the time. Her companion, Disan Lee, a level 90 warrior, observes that everyone present is of an exceptionally high level. From his vulnerable position, Yamamoto assesses the power imbalance. He understands with grim certainty that if a fight breaks out now, it will not end well for him, Sakurako, or Makoto against Leon and his formidable party members. Leon ignores him, instead directing a booming ultimatum at Sakurako. He demands to know her choice. Will she allow her two new friends to die, or will she return to him? Though still chained, Yamamoto steels himself, resolving that he must try something. He looks up at Leon, his voice cutting through the tension. "You're an embarrassment," he says plainly. The insult catches Leon by surprise, his aggressive posture faltering for a moment before his face twists into a condescending smirk as he asks what Yamamoto means. Yamamoto presses his verbal assault, questioning how Leon can claim to be the strongest when he is visibly trembling in fear over the loss of a single party member. The accusation wipes the smirk from Leon's face, leaving him momentarily speechless. He struggles to his feet, the chains rattling around him. He continues, stating that if Leon were truly the strongest, he would have challenged the Ashura ogre with his current party. The truth of the statement strikes a nerve, and Leon furiously bellows for him to shut up. Undeterred, Yamamoto poses a final, cutting question. Without Sakurako around, what exactly can Leon accomplish on his own? The query hangs in the air, causing Leon's new companions to look on with troubled expressions. Leon's face darkens, his features obscured by shadow as rage consumes him. He glares at the bound man, thinking to himself that the truth is that Yamamoto is incredibly weak. His composure shatters completely as he screams for silence. But Yamamoto delivers the final verbal blow, declaring that this weakness is precisely why Leon needs Sakurako, so she can beat the boss for him. His rage boiling over, he lunged forward, stabbing Haruhisa Yamamoto in the abdomen. The blade sank into flesh, but the wound was not deep. From nearby, Aisaki Makoto cried out her companion's name in horror as Yamamoto stared down at the sword protruding from his side, his expression a mixture of pain and shock. The act of violence immediately drew the attention of his party. Kokono Sakurako, her expression cold and menacing, moved to intervene. She called him a bastard, her voice low. Leon flinched, pleading for her to wait, a flicker of fear in his eyes as his other party members, Megumi Katori and Disan Lee, watched the confrontation unfold with unease. He, however, remained defiant despite the blade in his gut. Sweat beaded on his brow as he looked up at his captor, his voice strained but steady. He questioned what was wrong, asking if Leon truly believed such a shallow strike would be enough to kill him. He pressed his verbal assault, declaring that if this was the extent of Leon's power, it was no wonder he couldn't beat a floor boss. The words struck a nerve. Leon's face contorted with rage, and he snarled, calling Yamamoto an impudent little whelp. He leaned in close, shouting that Yamamoto was nothing more than a hostage, alive only because of his whim. His voice rose to a fever pitch as he desperately tried to reassert his dominance. He bellowed, questioning if Yamamoto truly thought he couldn't challenge the boss without Sakurako, proclaiming himself the strongest warrior in the world. Yamamoto met the outburst with a calm, cutting challenge. He told Leon to prove it, right then and there. The declaration hung in the air, a stark contrast to Leon's frantic boast that he could conquer a dungeon anytime he wished. He then laid out the precise terms of his challenge. Defeat the floor boss of the 90th floor, the Ashura ogre, without any help from Sakurako. He finished his proposition, stating that if Leon could accomplish this feat, he would acknowledge him, and, in return, Leon could have Sakurako. He watched as Leon Kanzaki grappled with the weight of the challenge, the young man muttering to himself about the impossibility of defeating the Ashura ogre. Internally, Yamamoto agreed, a bead of sweat tracing its way down his temple as he thought the task was indeed impossible. The young man's doubt, however, quickly hardened into defiance. He rejected the notion of impossibility, shouting that for him, nothing was impossible. With a roar, he declared his intent to defeat the Ashura ogre and prove he was the strongest, punctuating his vow by driving his sword into the stone floor just inches from Yamamoto's foot. He ordered Yamamoto to stay put. Having made his declaration, Leon turned to leave with his party. His companions, Megumi Katori and Disan Lee, followed him down the stone corridor. Disan Lee urged them on, though his voice held a note of uncertainty. As their footsteps faded, the strength holding Yamamoto upright finally gave way. He collapsed face first onto the cold stone, the chains binding him rattling with the impact. A single, weary thought crossed his mind. He should have at least asked them to remove the chains before they left. Lying helpless on the floor, he heard the sharp sound of a blade being drawn. Kokono Sakurako stood over him, her katana already in motion, slicing through the metal links binding his arms. With his last bit of strength, he managed a quiet word of thanks. Immediately after being freed, Aisaki Makoto knelt beside him, her voice filled with panic as she cried out his name. Shaking him gently, she frantically asked if he was all right and if they needed to use a potion, pleading for him not to shake her. He managed a weak laugh, clutching a potion vial. Sakurako watched him, her expression stern. She admonished him, stating that provoking people so unnecessarily and recklessly was bad for his heart. Her words prompted a question from Aisaki Makoto, who had stepped back. She called out, asking if his provocation of Leon had been intentional. From his seated position against a pillar, Yamamoto calmly confirmed that it was. He elaborated on his strategy, explaining that he wanted to avoid a large-scale fight. His primary goal, he admitted, was to ensure no one got hurt, and he believed his gambit was the best way to achieve that. Sakurako conceded his point, acknowledging that he had indeed escaped the confrontation with wounds that a simple potion could heal. As she spoke, her face remained impassive. Yamamoto began to add a qualification to his success, trailing off with a simple, but he listens as Kokono Sakurako admonishes him, her hands on her hips. She states firmly that it's not a good thing for him to be taking on such huge risks all by himself. Aisaki Makoto quickly agrees, reminding Haruhisa Yamamoto that he himself had declared everyone's safety to be their top priority. He looks at her with a serious expression, pointing out that he is also a part of that everyone she just mentioned. The man lowers his head, conceding their point. He admits they are right and offers a simple apology as both women look on. He then explains his reasoning, stating that he thought it was the boss's job to protect their subordinates. As the party leader, he considers himself their boss. He looks up at them, admitting that while it feels strange to say aloud, he felt proud to have been able to protect them. Her expression shifts to one of disbelief. She sternly demands that he never do anything so reckless again, and he quickly apologizes, promising that he won't. She turns her back to him, quietly stating that it's a big brother's job to protect their little sister. As long as Sakurako is safe, she muses, that's enough for her big brother. Her cryptic remark leaves Yamamoto looking puzzled. With a small, knowing smile, she turns back and tells him that he is, truly, a very weird man. He quickly apologizes, explaining that his earlier declaration was just something said on the spur of the moment. The conversation is then interrupted by Makoto, who worriedly asks if there's a chance that Sakurako will have to leave their party. Her expression hardening with resolve. Aisaki Makoto declares that if it comes to it, she will resist with all her might. Haruhisa Yamamoto looks on, stunned, but Kokono Sakurako simply smiles. She reassures them not to worry, stating confidently that her place is right there in Haruhisa's party. With the tension broken, the group comes to an agreement. They will rest for the day, and tomorrow, they will all do their best together. He listens to their unified decision, a faint, assured smile forming on his face. His confidence in his team is restored. Elsewhere, the explorer Leon Kanzaki regards his own companions with a confident smirk. Well then, he announces, time to join the group. His party stands ready at a doorway. As they prepare to depart, an onlooker wishes them a safe trip, admitting their envy. From inside, another voice shouts for them to just get to it, as they can't have many